Welcome in the latest episode of Five on the Floor on the Five Reasons Sports Network. Thanks for finding us on your favorite podcast app. We're on Podbean. We're on Spotify. We're on Google Podcasts. We're on Apple Podcasts. We're also on Dash Radio on their Nothing But Net channel every single weekday from 7 to 8 p.m. Also, check me out on Onside Radio tomorrow. I'll be in with Ira Winderman at 10 a.m. for the usual Inside the Paint segment. We'll go an hour on that one. We've got Five Reasons YouTube channel. Royal Shepherd hosts the post up after every Heat game. He'll do it after every Heat playoff game. 2 and 5reasonsports.com. That's where you can find the latest from Brady Hawk, Alex Baumgartner at the Panther game one tonight, and also Chris Chase on the Marlins. Also, check out the great sponsors of the Five Reasons Sports Network, including our friends at Therapist Preferred. They just gave away $145 bundles, so I hope you got in on that. But this is a CBD company founded in 2019 by a physical therapist to optimize performance and recovery for active people. This is 100% THC free and third-party lab verified. All products made in the U.S. with cutting-edge technology from organically grown hemp. Most popular products, the CBD sports cream, the strawberry lemonade, and green apple flavored gummies. I got some of those here. They've been helping me sleep, but they can also help you recover. Free shipping on all orders, and use the promo code 5reasons. That's the number 5 reasons for 20% off your order. Again, that's 20% off and free shipping. All you got to do is use the promo code 5reasons. So shop now at therapistpreferred.com. That's therapistpreferred.com. Follow them on social media at THRPST Preferred. Therapist Preferred is for active people by active people. And now, today's episode.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5
on the floor.
Welcome to Five on the Floor, a daily show on the Miami Heat and the NBA featuring Ethan Skolnick with Alex Toledo and Greg Sylvander, part of the Five Reasons Sports Network.
All right, Ethan Skolnick back on Five on the Floor. Here's today's floor plan. We got Greg Sylvander. We got Tropical Blanket, Alex Toledo from somewhere in his car. Greg and I are both home tonight, so Alex will be on the move, running people over. Now, as we
road. We're good.
Right, that's bad. Yeah, don't pod and drive.
Don't tell Uber that. Like, definitely not. I'm not trying to lose my job.
Is it Uber or is it Lyft?
No, it's Uber. It's Uber. Come on, I can't advertise that other company over there.
Okay, I don't know which I'm supposed to. One of them you can schedule on, the other you can't. All right.
Can we get him as a sponsor with all the work that I've done?
I was just about to say, this is low-hanging fruit.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. What are you doing? All right, well, let's get to it, because right now the Miami Heat are bludgeoning the Detroit Pistons after they scored 69 points in the first half, and pretty much, nice. I mean, nobody of great significance. I don't want to say that. That sounds mean, but a lot of players were out tonight. Okay, let's just put it this way. 4 out of 5 starters, all but Duncan Robinson, who really only played because they wanted to get him to 72 games on the season and to extend his 3-point streak. The other 4 starters did not play. Also sitting Goran Dragic and Andre Iguodala. So a lot of guys did not play tonight, but it looks like the Heat are going to at least finish the season with 40 wins. They'll be 40-32. The big news today, though, Chris Bosh elected to the Hall of Fame. I did a video on that on the Five Reasons YouTube channel. We also covered that on Before Floor on the Five Reasons YouTube channel. And the other bit of news is the Nets won as expected against Cleveland, even though they sat James Harden, which locked the Miami Heat into the 6th seed against the Milwaukee. They were already locked into it, but locked the Milwaukee Bucks into the 3 seed against the Miami Heat at 6. The Knicks were challenged but won, and so they will be in the 4-5 matchup against Atlanta. So we know now that the Heat are playing the Bucks. Of course, they played them in the second round last year. They won 4-1, Heat in 5, all that good stuff. This is a different Bucks team. We are not going to focus on the Heat and Bucks today. We've got a week to get to that. We will cover all of that with a whole bunch of different guests during this week. We'll cover down every bit of this matchup, but we got a week to kill. We're going to look back a little bit. We're going to try to put this season into some perspective. Greg has compiled 5 key points from this year that were narratives. We're going to touch on kind of where those things went and also where they are as the playoffs stand. So number 1 on your list, and it was number 1 on my list, was Jimmy Butler. And here's the key thing about this. The Miami Heat were 14 games over 500 this year when Jimmy Butler played. He just didn't play enough. And they were awful when he didn't play. So I'll start here. Was this Jimmy Butler's best season, Greg? And where do you put him as we enter the playoffs in terms of players that should be feared around the NBA?
That's interesting. So I'll say it is due to the efficiency and the things that he's doing defensively, the way that he's just breaking things up all year long, that it's probably his most well-rounded season. He's had some offensive punch seasons that you just can't deny that were, really prolific, but this is his most well-rounded season, career highs across the board in a lot of really SPO-driven categories, I'll call them. And for me personally, like when I look around the league, it doesn't even really matter what fans think or what Twitter thinks or what the media thinks or the gas bag national media dudes. Like, I think if you polled the players around the league about like, who do you want to go into a 7-game series with and you have confidence about, Jimmy Butler's on the short list. Like, I feel like, there's obviously the Brons and the KDs and I won't unpack the whole list for the purposes of this show, but Jimmy's on the short list. So I don't know where I would put him in a ranking. I'm not going to do it that way, but there is no doubt that like he is, as you have continued to say on 5 on the Floor, way better than the Heat or anyone else expected. And I just think that it is paramount that they figure out a way to make another run with him because he's just awesome.
To me, there's no doubt about it. This was Jimmy Butler's most impressive, at least regular season. Like, even though he missed all the games, the actual stuff that he did on the court, to me, was not only his most well-rounded, because he showed this last year, obviously, but the way that he did it, where he just kind of controls games, he plays at his own pace always. And it's obvious when the team is without him that they're just not the same team. And it runs through him and his attitude and his leadership. And it's a real thing. Like, I know it's not technically quantifiable statistically, but it's obvious when the team is without him. It's just a hugely different story. When he's on the court, he's one of the best guys at, when it comes to rim pressure. And that's severely missed when he's not playing, especially because Goran can't do it consistently anymore. And he's awesome at getting to the line, an awesome playmaker, an awesome defender. And he's done it at an extremely efficient level this year, despite all the kind of, polarizing circumstances. And, it wasn't a great season at all, despite a short turnaround from a great finals performance where he had to carry the team on his back over there too. Like, it's just a physical accomplishment, putting up his best season despite the circumstances.
I think the thing we need to put into context here too is something that Greg mentioned, which is that I think that the calculus for this team has changed and this franchise has changed because Jimmy is better than they thought he was. And that this all becomes about Jimmy Butler. I feel like that changed during the finals, where now there's a feeling that they owe it to Jimmy, that they have to bring in some additional help, that they can't rely on him to carry them. And I think we saw it wear on Jimmy at times this year in a way it didn't wear on him last year. Some frustration with some of the young players who disconnected. We'll talk about maybe one of them here probably in part 3 of this episode, but also some frustration, I think, at times that Bam, who we'll talk about in part 2, wasn't developing the alpha personality maybe quickly enough for Jimmy. Not to say that things are fractured. They're not. Not to say that Jimmy wants to leave the franchise. He doesn't. Not to say that Pat Riley has failed Jimmy Butler. He hasn't. Okay. None of that stuff. But I do think that the calculus has changed here in regard to, maybe at times during Dwayne's career that they didn't sort of act quickly enough. I think there was some regret about that. And now you don't have kind of the LeBron Bosch prospect in the back of your head like you did with Wade. You had it with Giannis. It doesn't exist anymore. The free agents are not there. And so now it does become, can we win one with him quickly and maybe with the guys he wants to win with? And that's where the Kyle Lowry conversation comes into play. And I don't think it's a bad thing, actually, as we look forward, which we're not going to do a ton tonight, that Kyle Lowry is going to miss the entire playoffs. I think that actually make him more attractive to the Heat in the offseason.
That point.
That he's going to get some rest. He's literally, guys, he's gotten rest for the past 2 months. I mean, that
he was kind of banged up at the end. I mean, I know, not all the games were because he was injured, but we know that they were kind of selling, but he's been banged up a little bit. I think it was something in his foot or his toe or something where I think he put some of that weight back on.
DeRozan will get some rest too.
Well,
Oh,
right. Well, he probably will after the play-in. So might Steph, but he's not really available. All right, so on point one here, Jimmy Butler, to me, it was his most complete season, even if he couldn't complete all the games. He career high in shooting percentage, career high in assists, career high in rebounds, career high in steals. And the only thing he wasn't a career high in was points, and that's not necessarily what they needed from him all the time. And also, maybe his best defensive season. Not that I've seen all of them, the way I saw this one, but certainly he played at an elite level defensively. All right, let's get to number 2 here. The other big narrative of the season, the development of Bam Adebayo. And we have beaten this to death. So I don't want to overdo it here, except to say this, okay? Do you believe that he can change the narrative on him at this stage, which is, we can talk about it was his third season, second full season as a star, all the rest of that stuff and how far he's come and that he's exceeded all expectations, except maybe ours, and everything that he's accomplished here. But does he have time in the postseason to maybe make Heat fans feel better about that max as it comes, that the alpha thing is in him somewhere? Greg?
Yes, I mean, he definitely has time because, for one thing, we all, but Heat fans particularly have short memories, and they've already kind of, the Tatum block is gone. Like, there's that, any equity that was built up with all of that stuff is now what have you done for me lately? And so Bam Adebayo just needs to do some things lately, and I think he will. And I think it's important to keep it in perspective that dude continues to climb statistically. As they give him more, he's able to absorb more. And the one part of his game, and I continue to just beat this drum, is that the final form Bam is going to be when he engages aggressively in this different kind of way. And it ties back to what you mentioned about Jimmy and the frustration about him maybe not being an alpha now. I don't think that has anything to do with Jimmy second guessing Bam Adebayo as a sidekick, as a teammate, as a building block to a franchise that he wants to be attached to at all. It's more about Jimmy just wants some help so that he doesn't have to do all the heavy lifting this season. So he was just hoping that somebody else was ready to do that now. But I think that ultimately Bam will get there. And he can absolutely, particularly in this first round matchup against Giannis, I think that there's ways that he can make Heat fans go into next season and say, let's do this max thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I do think Bam has time to kind of make people feel even better, because I do think in general, most people feel he's deserving of a max, even without knowing that it doesn't really start till next season. But people saw him show up in the playoffs. They, on the highest stages. He was obviously at his best versus Boston, which is a smaller team, but he was great in all the different series. He was the cheat code to why they were able to shut down the Bucks in 5 games. And that team was the most dominant team for 2 straight seasons in the regular season. So Bam has already shown it. Obviously the Lakers, the final series where he was banged up is different. But to me, I think we've all kind of, and this is something we talked about all year as fans, we want him to move through that trajectory a little bit faster than it's happening. And I'm still on that same page, even though I always try to have perspective about it. I'm not mad at Bam, but I also get disappointed. Last night I wasn't on the pod, but it was just frustrating. It was another one of those nights that just reminded me of that Mavericks loss and other losses where, when Jimmy's not there, it's not just about shot attempts, but it kind of comes down to it, because when you look at the stats from last night, and I don't have them in front of me, it was 1 million 3-point attempts, not a lot of free throws. It just wasn't a lot of rim pressure at all. And it just seems obvious to me that you have a guy like that who can move so well, can handle the ball so well, and you have multiple shooters. And it's cool that he's such a good playmaker. He needs to step up the playmaking as well when Jimmy's out. But you need to have that balance where guys are screening for him and you're running actions for Bam. I feel like I've said this over and over, and maybe, I haven't asked Spo this. Obviously we record, after games when Spo goes on, and I'm not even trying to make an excuse here, but I wouldn't ask Spo that, because I know from Ethan's pro tips that he wouldn't divulge that type of information anyways, and he would just get pissed at me for even asking that. But really, like, I wonder if we're going to see some of that unveiled in the playoffs where, like, you know, Duncan, Tyler, Kendrick, Goran, Jimmy, whoever, like, we actually start seeing some screens to get Bam going downhill, because it's like right there in front of you. He can clearly do it. You got to give him a little bit of confidence. And to me, I know I'm rambling a little bit because I just think Bam is that good and he's that capable. And on a team like this where you don't have that other, you know, high-level shot creator, because, you know, Oladipo didn't end up panning out and they don't have Kyle Lowry on their roster yet. Like, that's one of those things where it just, I think that's why everybody gets so frustrated. It's like, well, somebody needs to step up. It's your second best player. It's your max player who you saw dominate before. You know, it's in his, you know, capability. And so I think we're going to see that huge growth next season from Bam as a scorer. And to me, in the playoffs, it's going to depend on how well he defends the Bucks and Giannis, and because it's really right there in front of him to do it again. And also, how much does he impose himself on offense, and how much does the Heat tailor make some sort of offense that's, you know, beneficial for Bam to get going?
I think one of the things that's hurt Bam here a little bit in terms of expectations is that essentially the Heat had 2 seasons last year, you know, and so I don't even think the idea of Bam being, you know, I feel like people think Bam's like in his 6th year at this stage. Like, we saw pre-bubble, we saw post-bubble, we saw the playoffs and that deep run and going into the finals. And although he couldn't finish the finals. And so I do think
you remember also when all the years of Summer League and Miami Pro League, where he was kind of doing all the handles of the flashes of shot creation there. I think that's also kind of built into the foundation there of expectations, right?
Well, I also think what happens is we see this with a lot of players. They go from, we build them up to tear them down, right? And they go from underrated to overrated, back to underrated, back to overrated. We saw this happen. I mean, I was thinking about Bam today with the Bosch announcement, because, you know, I remember Heat fans because I was on the front lines of that thing. I remember there was a dedicated group of Heat fans during the Big Three era that did not care for Chris Bosh's game. Did not. Needs to get in the post. Needs to rebound more. Doesn't bring it every night. Drifts sometimes when you don't have LeBron and Dwayne. I heard all of this stuff. I got called like the Bosh defender on a lot of this because I was looking at the other things that he did. Now, he and Bam are not the same player, but there are similarities. There were a lot of things that Chris did unselfishly, maybe not as a passer like Bam, but just giving up some of his game, getting to the right spots, spacing the floor just so that others could do damage when really Chris could have done his own damage. There's a lot of revisionist history about Chris Bosh that's gone on since Chris retired compared to kind of what was really going on when it was happening. And I feel like Chris did that. There was that ebb and flow with Chris. He went underrated, he went maybe a little overrated to highly underrated as his career went on. And I don't think that's lost on either of them. And remember, I remember having Chris Bosh on a podcast a couple of years ago when Justice and Josh were still on the team. And he said Bam was the guy. Bam was the guy that one of these guys needs to step forward, but it was clear he wasn't talking about Josh or Justice. He was talking about Bam. I think he saw a lot of himself in that. So we'll see what happens in the playoff series. But we'll go to the next thing. All right. Before we get to number 3 here of the narratives of the season, how they carry over to the playoffs, I'll tell you about another great sponsor of the 5 Reasons Sports Network. I'm going to try to get in there tomorrow because I've had a little bit too much fried chicken this weekend. That's F45 in Cooper City. They'll kick your ass and you'll feel better for it. They specialize in 45-minute fun and innovative high-intensity interval training programs, personal training in a group environment. This is not a regular gym. They've got pods for everybody there. You have your own pod with your own weights, everything else that you need. They have different kinds of sessions. If you want more of a, you want more of a strength training session, you want more of a cardio session, they will tailor it to you. They've got a couple of trainers that go around the entire time. Make sure that you're staying motivated, not on your phone. The workouts burn up to 500 calories per session. They help you drop the quarantine 15 if you still got that. Month to month, no contract memberships available for as low as $8 a session. They will not tie you in for life like your neighborhood gym. And they've got discounts for teachers, nurses, military, and first responders. You can try them out free for 7 days. The phone number, 954-745-4517. That's 954-745-4517. 45-17. I'm also going to post it on my Twitter account, a direct link, because we want you to go to Cooper City. These things are popping up all over the place because it's popular. We know the folks, though, at Cooper City. They're going to take really good care of you if you mention 5 reasons when you go in there. So, again, it's F45 in Cooper City, right there in Broward County. All right, let's get to number 3 here. And, Greg, you threw this one on here, and I think there's a bunch of different ways we could have gone with this one. But really, I think one of the key points this season was who was going to be the third guy for the Heat. And I think that this became a bigger issue when there seemed to be more established third guys that the Heat could go after, right? The whole James Harden thing before the season ever started, which I think got in some of the players' heads on this team, whether you're going to make a run at Bradley Beal, whether you can maybe try to pry John Collins loose, whether or not you might get Victor Oladipo, which they ended up doing, and that lasted all of 4 games. But on the roster, if there was going to be a third player this year, it was supposed to be Tyler Herro. And there were moments it was, but not enough of them. Now, he played really well down the stretch. He sort of found his game, was shooting 65% from 3 over, I think, a 5-game period. It's just the consistency. So I'll just get to it this way. We saw Tyler Herro essentially act as a third guy at times, although was more often Goran Dragic during the playoffs last year. Can Tyler Herro, if Goran can't give them that in the postseason consistently, can Tyler Herro be the third guy?
Yeah, I think to start out, Goran was the third guy, and I think his salary dictated that as well. But it was also predicated on everyone thinking here any regression that you would see from Goran, just naturally, that you would be seeing it made up by Herro. And this year, I mean, you have to honestly kind of look at it that he was basically, a couple percentage points behind from a 3-point shooting perspective. Otherwise, pretty flat to last year with stats, but he didn't have those same moments and those same just the late game stuff and just the hot streaks and the making guys fall down and the confidence factor stuff. It's just some of it just looked like it was missing. And this is a question that if you asked me at the beginning of the season, do I want to move Herro for a more win now player? I would have said no. I want to protect the back end of this franchise's window and align with Bam Adebayo and his timeline and his age. And now I have to be honest, this playoff run, we talked about what can Bam do to get in the good graces of the fan base to justify his max. I don't even think that's the question for me. I'm watching Tyler Herro in these playoffs, and I want to know, is he ready to take that next step, or is he going to have to become the piece that gets the third guy?
Yeah, I pretty much agree there. I was definitely a year ago, and even not even a year ago, after the bubble, I was more hesitant to trade Tyler unless it was for, a much bigger piece. We used to talk about Bradley Beal a whole lot. I don't know if he's cool with that 9th seed. It seems like he is. But in general, I agree. I think Tyler is somebody who I would trade for a win now player. I don't remember if you guys end up convincing me to kind of go on that page of trading him for Lowry during the trade deadline stuff. I may have caved at the end there before it ended up not happening, but I did not like that idea. I just think,
me neither.
As much as I love Lowry as an option for this team, I knew that, and this was an argument against Oladipo, I thought this was more relevant for Lowry because Lowry's the guy you actually want to use cap space on. You want to, you can just get him in the offseason, right? And maybe they don't get him, but it seems like they've got a real chance there. And that's not somebody that I think that's worth trading Tyler for only because of the age factor. I just think it's too much of a gap, right? And even though Lowry's still really good, I think you can throw Tyler into a package with other guys, I think, and I think you have something there. But to me, Tyler's just had a lot of peaks and valleys. I see the growth from him. I see the confidence is back. I think a lot of that seemingly had to do with the foot, and ever since he came back from that, he just looks kind of like how he used to, more or less. To me, he's still a good player. I'm not really worried about him going forward. I think he needs to grow into his body a little bit. I still think he's somebody, along with Kendrick, even though they don't have their games are not that similar. They're both kind of junior 3-level scorers, right? They can do a little bit of everything from that end, from that aspect. But Tyler is somebody worth keeping to me, unless, there's just an awesome guy out there that's worth having.
I am leaning toward the fact that Tyler Herro is not going to make it through this cycle with the Heat.
What do you mean by cycle?
I think to me the Jimmy cycle.
Yeah.
Okay.
I can even suggest how it'll happen. It'll happen quickly, and Ethan will go right back to you. You sign Lowry with space, and I think Herro becomes a piece that you package together to go get the other piece to kind
that's
of
what I'm saying.
tie a bow on that roster.
That's what I'm saying is that that's why you didn't trade Herro before. I think you're talking about two cycles here. There's a Jimmy cycle and there's a Bam cycle. I don't think Herro survives the Jimmy cycle to get to the Bam cycle. I thought so before, but again, Pat Riley is on a clock here, and Jimmy Butler is on a clock, and it's not that Tyler's not a good player, but to me, Tyler becomes the Justice, becomes the Josh Richardson, becomes the Caron Butler, becomes the Lamar Odom that is traded to get the piece to fill this thing out. I think what this season proved is they don't really have time to wait. And I know people are going to come after me when we talk about depth here and say what I said about Harden and all that. I never said you don't trade Herro for Harden. I said you don't trade the whole damn team for Harden. And the reality is, as we've said many times before, it wasn't even an option. Okay, so it's not like they took our advice or anything like that. Houston didn't want the type of things that the Heat were offering at that time, or that the Heat could offer because they didn't have the draft picks. But I just think Tyler Herro becomes the guy that maybe gets the first round pick that gets you somebody, or he becomes the guy that gets you, the better player at that position at this time, and you live with whatever his upside is. I also think that what's happened to Justice and Josh, since they left is a little bit more of an impetus to move Tyler. Because there were concerns in the organization, particularly about Josh, about moving him. And we've seen it hasn't worked out for Josh in two other places. Like there's no real regret there, right? With Justice, it hasn't worked out. I don't think there was regret when they made the trade because I think they were done with him, but it hasn't worked out. So I think with Tyler, it's kind of the same thing. And even if you look at the other guys that they've traded, the Pats traded to get the piece, okay? Lamar Odom had a very good career with the Lakers. He was a sixth man, which is where he was most comfortable. He wasn't the spotlighted guy. Kobe loved playing with him. Caron had a very nice career where he bumped around to a bunch of different teams as maybe their third best player on a whole bunch of teams. But it was neither of them turned into guys that were completely irreplaceable, right? Even Glenn Rice, who's the ultimate example of this, he became an all-star after he left. You love Glenn Rice. I loved watching Glenn Rice. Glenn Rice was not a centerpiece like Zoe. You didn't regret.
I learned quickly.
Right. I know this goes counter to all the conversations we had about Harden.
He was your Justice?
What's that?
He was your Justice, Leif?
Back then, yes, I was so mad at Pat. But then I quickly learned that there's a vision there. So anyway, back to Ethan.
Yeah, I don't think he's going to survive the cycle. It's not disparaging him, but he's not as advanced as Bam. And I think that anybody that Jimmy is going to play with during this period of time has to be at least as advanced as Bam to be one of their top three players. And I still think Goran's going to be here because I don't think Jimmy wants him gone. And Kendrick Nunn has become a conversation now too. I heard some numbers about Kendrick Nunn yesterday, not from his side, but from people around the league, that you may be looking at 15 per at a lot of years. It's going to be a complicated situation.
Hey man, I like you, Kendrick, but peace.
Hey man, I'm happy for you. Go chase that bag.
I'm just saying. All right, we will get to number 4 here in a second, but I want to tell you about another great sponsor of the 5 Reasons Sports Network, and that's our friends over at Miami Grill. You got to get some of those gyros. You got to get the wings. You got to get the burgers. You can do it in Miami Grill, or you can get delivery, pick up anything that you want to do. Miami Grill, they got locations all over South Florida. If you're craving it, they're making it. They also got the souvenir cups now for $2.99 if you want to check that out. But Miami Grill, again, they're very Miami like we are. So find them if you're in Lauderdale, Commercial Boulevard, Oakland Park Boulevard. I know that our guy Alex knows the spot south, even though I try to avoid Dade County as much as I possibly can. But you can find Miami Grills.
I went to the Hollywood one.
See, that's Hollywood's a little closer to my territory. I could do that. And I lived there for a bit. MyMiamiGrill.com or download the Miami Grill app. All right, let's get to number 4 here. This was a joke at my expense for a while. Don't trade the depth in a COVID season. Now, I made this point because I knew the guys were going to go in and out, and that it did indeed happen. I think what happened, though, is that the Heat's depth was not as good as we thought it was. So I'll get to this. They're blowing up tonight, so this is probably a bad night to do this pod. Okay, Okpala looks great, Precious looks good.
It's 93-66 as we're doing this.
I mean, maybe they all should have played. Maybe they should have been the guys playing against Milwaukee the other night.
When are they so good at scoring?
Max Strus had a vicious dunk that Bam was excited about and Iguodala was excited about. But I'll just leave it at this, and I'll start with you, Alex, this time. Did the Heat's development reputation and identification of talent reputation take a bit of a hit this year? I mean, Okpala is not what they hoped, I think, at this stage. We can talk about no summer league and all the rest of that. We have Precious obviously hit a wall. The two-way guys, Strus gave him something. Vincent's kind of one-dimensional, and the dimension he has is not the one we thought he had because he can't really shoot. He defends. Did they take a hit this year from developmental perspective? I'm
not there. I don't think because some of those guys didn't hit and ended up kind of being third-string guys. Like, these guys were later picks in the draft. I feel like I would feel that way maybe if it was a higher pick. But, we saw them pick Tyler Herro at 14 and turn him into a really good, a very good rotation player to have in his rookie season. And this year you talk about Precious, I think Precious looked pretty damn good those first couple of months, relative to being a rookie backup 5, right? And I think ever since he got benched for Dedmon, and by the way, I think that connects to this whole conversation about finding talent because Dedmon was clearly somebody they needed. The Ariza thing, to me, they nailed that. You already know I'm a big fan of Ariza's game. And sorry, my laptop is over here going crazy. But seriously, Strus and Vincent are not even guys I think about when it comes to this. They're fine. They're cool two-way guys to have. But Precious and KZ are the guys who just need some more time and reps, whether it's summer league, whether it's, games like this that don't matter. They're not there yet. But to me, they've got, with everything that they've done with the veterans and the signs that some of these younger guys have shown, I think they're all right. I think KZ is the one that bothers me a little bit just because you think he'd be a little bit further along. He just hasn't shown anything on offense, really, besides that one spin move that he had a month ago. And, he plays solid defense, so I'll give him that. He's gotten better on defense. He doesn't look as lost. He's out there giving a whole lot of effort. He's not just standing around. But I'm not really there yet. I don't think I'm there that the Heat's development took a hit this season.
Thank you, Alex, because there's a couple things here. So part of the whole process, as I understand it, and many people probably say I don't understand it, is that you were acquiring picks because the more opportunities you had at players, you were going to inevitably hit on one or two of those players and you would build a great team, right? Well, there's a little bit of that philosophy here. You're going to bring in a lot of and cycle through a lot of these guys, these undrafted guys, these two-way guys, these end of the bench, second round players. And some of them you're going to hit on and some of them you aren't. It's not something that you're going to do every single season. It's never been that way with the Heat. There's been stretches where they've gone on droughts. I think the LeBron era excluded because they completely shifted away from any developmental thoughts. After that era, they've always had something in the pipeline, and it may be a little bleak now, but only because the guys that they've just groomed, the Duncan, the Nuns, the Heroes, the Bams, are all now, starter level players. So I just feel like we're not there yet.
Well, you're right about the big three era. I mean, Norris Cole, who was a late first round pick, was pretty much the only young player they really integrated with that group in any way. And
in retrospect, it was a mistake.
It was, but it was a mistake that was forced by what they felt was a positional need to a certain degree. But again, one of the reasons they drafted Norris was he had played as a leader where he was the go-to guy down the stretch for his college team. and he'd played multiple years there in that
Yeah,
role.
no, sorry, Ethan. I meant the lack of focus on development.
Oh, no, I know. Well,
was a mistake.
they argue with me about that, and they'll mention Norris as that guy, right, that was there, and they'll also talk about how, well, Rio was drafted in 08, so he was, but I mean, by then, I mean, he was already he was, I mean, you know, Rio would tell you he was already a superstar by 2010. So I don't know that Rio may be the best example, but no, they had the Terrell Harrises and the Mikal Gladnesses, and nobody really panned out. And they didn't put any stock into it. They'd rather go get a Rashard Lewis, which again, I understood at the time. I mean, you have LeBron's window, but now we're talking about kind of the same thing, right? You have Jimmy's window, and Jimmy's not LeBron, but Jimmy's actually older than LeBron was at that stage. And it does become a question of, okay, who can he trust? I think all of these questions that we're talking about now, and the Heat may come to regret this in 2-3 years if Jimmy does decline, as people expected him to do because of all those, Tibbs years, right? Even though, again, as I said, Jimmy's minutes are not as great over the course of his career as people think they are. But if he does start to decline, then people will say, well, the Heat went too all in on Jimmy Butler and they were put in a bad position. But the reality is Jimmy has outplayed what you expected, and so you have to do it. And so I don't know that there's going to be a lot of room for the Max Struses of the world as we go forward, because I think that there's going to be more of an emphasis on trying to get vets he can trust. And I do think you mentioned Ariza and Dedmon, that they're kind of the proof of concept there, right? Like Ariza and Dedmon earned Jimmy's trust, each of them within the first week.
Yeah.
And that's not something that Precious did. It's not something, to be honest, that Tyler has at times this year. It's not. And I just think you're going to get to a certain point with Jimmy where he wants to win a championship. He wants to win it in Miami, and he wants to win it with his guys and the guys that he can, go to battle with every night.
But you're going to need a couple low salary players to outperform their cap, the percentage of cap that they're taking up. So like a Max Strus, for instance, they may not go and find a bunch more Max Struses, but he could end up being a player that you can find a role for, similar to how they did with Duncan. Obviously Duncan's on another trajectory, but point taken for sure.
All right. We're going to get to number 5 here.
That's what Max Strus is doing.
So kind of sums all this up in a second. Before we do, one more sponsor we want to tell you about. That's Everything Trade Shows. COVID is not over, but people are starting to go out, get vaccinated, which you should do. I've got both of mine here. Did the Pfizer thing. You may want to get your company back involved in a trade show, but you might need help because you might not have your entire marketing team back. Things are still in flux, so you need a one-stop shop. Go to everythingtradeshows.com, and you got to mention 5 reasons, whether you go there and you reach out to someone directly through there or at 954-791-8882. That's 954-791-8882. If you mention 5 reasons, you get a free consultation. You get a free booth rendering. They're based right here in Fort Lauderdale, but they service all 50 states. They can handle logistics, booth, graphics, furniture, flooring, even some tips so you can get noticed. They can tell you the difference between renting and buying and how that'll work for you. It's a one-stop shop for trade shows. So again, everythingtradeshows.com, 954-791-8882. 8-2. All right, let's get to number 5 and let's try to sum this thing up. There's no question that the Heat regressed to a certain degree from where they were in the bubble last year. I don't think any of us can argue different. I think we were trying to make the case before that if they ended up with a 4 seed, and with as much as Jimmy was out, you could actually say in some ways the season was an improvement, because last year they were a 5 seed. They're not a 4 seed. They're not a 5 seed. They're a 6 seed. When I posted on Twitter, which is the loss this season that annoys you the most, I got 15 different answers, because whether it was Golden State or losing to the Clippers twice when they didn't have 4 starters, or whether it was that game against Atlanta without Trae Young and Capella, or whether it was Charlotte at home where Malik Monk went nuts, or whether it was Minnesota, or whether it was Detroit earlier this season. These are just all off the top of my damn head, okay? And they're off of the top of the damn heads of everybody else. I do not think you can plausibly argue that this was a better season than last season, no matter how things were trending pre-COVID. You cannot argue it. I'm not
absolutely not.
No.
Okay, I'm not letting either of you argue that. But I will ask this question. Does this in any way invalidate anything that happened in the bubble last year? Alex?
Hell no.
Okay,
Hell
well,
no.
You go first.
The 2 seasons are not related, and I just think that like they're connected in ways, but I just don't think that one is indicative of a fluke. Because like, are we going to ask that question about the Lakers if they're in a play-in game? Like, think about if the Heat were about to embark on a play-in situation this week, how Heat fans would be taking that. The Lakers, the defending champions, maybe doing that. The Celtics, their Eastern Conference finalists, are doing that. The Nuggets, they didn't finish first. Anyway, so I don't know. I will say that they regressed, but there's just a part of this where I feel like they still got a shot. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm pretty much feeling the same. Like, they should have a better roster than they did last year if Vic was healthy. And it's not just about Vic, but to me, like, the Dedmon thing was is important. The Ariza thing is important. I still kind of like him better than Crowder. The one thing is Goran's decline. I think Jimmy and Bam are still good, if not better than they were last year. I think Duncan is better than last year. I think Kendrick is better than last year. I think Tyler, more or less, right? I think more skilled than last year, maybe not as consistent. But to me, like, it's just not a better season. I don't know how I feel about this team right now, because you guys have heard me say since, they clapped the Bucks last year in 5 games that I'm not afraid of them, even after they signed Drew. But, the more the time has gone by, it's just getting worrisome, right? And I don't know, man. I feel up and down on this Heat team. That's kind of how their whole season has been. I think they have a real shot, right, with the Bucks. I don't think it's like, I was really annoyed with them last night because they had a chance to completely stay away from that. And you know what? If they're that confident in the matchup, then who am I to doubt their confidence? It feels tough to guarantee that confidence is going to match the output that we're expecting, because I think that the standard was what they did last year, right? And we know the Bucks are better, but it's almost like, are the Heat better? Probably not. Are the Bucks better? Probably. They're going to have home court advantage, and the Heat have a shot, but now everything is against them. They're back. They're right back to being that underdog.
And the expectations have changed.
Well, the expectations have changed in one way because they got to the finals and they were raised, and the expectations have been lowered because they've been so damn frustrating this year. It is remarkable to me. I was thinking about it today that they won 40 games. I mean, they're going to end up 40-32, right? That they won 40 games, and I can remember so few of the wins. I remember there are so many of those losses. Like, it just reminds you how many bad teams there are in the NBA, because really, like, with some of those games that they should have closed out, like 47-25 should have happened. Like, there was at least,
you're right.
I mean, if you win half of those ridiculous games that turned out to be losses, the 14 of them, you go 7-7 in those, you're 47-25.
Yeah, and you're
right?
cruising to a 3 seed. You bring up such a good point about not remembering the victories, and maybe this is something we'll unpack on a later episode, like when we really look back on the season. But like, I really don't have like that signature victory that I can think about. I mean, yeah, the Philly game the other day was awesome.
The Portland game, I mean,
yeah,
New
but
Orleans,
it's like a Western Conference team. That's just not it. You know what I mean? I guess you know what it is. It's the back-to-back in Boston.
Home.
It's the back-to-back in Boston.
It's the back-to-back in Boston. But again, that was a beaten up Boston
You're
team.
right.
I'm not gonna
exactly.
Okay. I mean, to me, their best game of the season, their most complete game and most entertaining game is probably the win over Utah. I thought it was one of their most. And Philly, I mean, let's be real about this. For everything that Jimmy did this year and everything that Bam did, and Duncan, playing all 72 and obviously having moments, and Tyler had a few. Kendrick Nunn, I think, is one of the better stories of the season. Mm-hmm. Those 3 minutes from Udonis Haslem are what I'm going to remember from this year. I mean, right?
Kind of.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely. That moment was electric. I couldn't believe it was happening when it was happening there at the game. And by the way, that's 2 seasons in a row now, at least in my opinion, that Heat Sixers is the best home game. Like, I think.
Oh yeah.
The other two things I take away from this year as I immediately download, like right this moment, is that Duncan overcame the shooting stuff. And I think that is an important thing we didn't discuss on this pod, but I'll take that away. And also
better all around.
Bam's game winner against Brooklyn. Like, there was something about that I felt like we were making so much progress, but we'll see.
We thought that was the Bam breakthrough, and then
Correct.
he went back in the shell again. Yes, I will say having gone to that one too, that one certainly is top 10, top 5, maybe higher
That
than
was
that.
awesome.
But yeah, but I just there were not. Part of it was the nature of the season, which I think the NBA they botched. I just it was not a fun season for a lot of reasons. I don't think this was as frustrating a season as maybe 06, 07 was, as maybe, some of the others that were over 500, but they didn't play particularly well. I don't think it was as frustrating as some of those. Shit. 13-14 was frustrating. That was not a fun year at all. Okay.
Yeah.
And that they ended up going to the finals. But I don't know. I think this is one. I get the sense when I talk to Heat people, like they want to make a run, and when it's over,
They want to break, man.
they want to break. They want to break. I think
Like they're
Same.
human beings as we are.
right. I mean, we want to break, but
We
but
haven't
we don't
stopped
wanna break
potting
yet.
for like 2 straight years. Like,
Yeah, we don't. That's right. That's all we do is pot every night. We want to break, but we don't want it for 2 months. So hopefully the Heat can make a little bit of run here.
Yeah.
Post up
You know
5
me.
hours where you're going to want to go after every game. We got sponsors we need to take care of. So make sure if the Heat get out of this damn first round, we will spend the next week previewing Heat Bucks. We're also going to try to grab a couple of good guests for you guys. Check out our sponsors. We had a lot of them in this one. Yes, Alex. Yes.
well, look, I know that we've been recording while this game has been going on, but shout out to Tyler, man. I'm just looking at the box score now as you're talking. 11 assists along with 16 points, 6 rebounds, 7 of 12 shooting. Precious, 7 of 12 shooting. Nemanja Bjelica, 7 of 11 shooting. Gabe Vincent, 5 of 10. And you got 6 of 14.
Don't trade depth in the COVID
Oh,
year.
I was going to say it.
And it's not even over. You got 6 of 14 from Strus and 5 of 8 from Okpala. Like, maybe this is the team they should have been trotting out. That's amazing.
That's going to be the title of this one. Don't trade depth in a COVID year. Have a good night.
Thank you for listening to the Five on the Floor on the Five Regional Sports Network.